Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. I have to say, it's like I'm just waiting for like the sun to come out and it to stop raining. It's like I don't live in the Pacific Northwest. I live in Buffalo, and it's like, it's better than snow, no doubt, but the opening day for AAA, the Bisons, is next week, Tuesday, and I'd like to not have to wear my winter jacket and my heavy gloves and a toque. So, but anyway, we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So let's talk a little Shohei Ohtani, because his earnings were talked about today, because he's like Michael Jordan at this point. He's making $30 million from baseball, but he's making $40 million on endorsements, and you can't name another baseball player like that. Nobody gets close to that amount of endorsements. Nobody. And so it does make you wonder if that makes it easier for a team like Seattle to sign him, because they don't have to pay him the most in baseball, because he's already making more than he'll make in baseball outside of baseball. So if he wants to go somewhere and sign for less next year, he can.
I mean, the union won't be happy if he does.
He probably doesn't care.
Right, he doesn't care. But I mean, I do know that like Ichiro and Godzilla, Hideki Matsui, and a few other of the Japanese players make a ton.
Yeah, nothing like this though.
So yeah, I mean, he's right now. I mean, again, it's a few seasons. If he keeps doing this for another 6 or 7 years, then he's one of the best of all time. I mean, Ruth only did it. He was a pitcher from I think 1914 to like 1919.
Yeah.
When he went, and that was what the years with the Red Sox, and then he got sold to the Yankees, and he pitched a little bit in the first couple of years, but then he primarily became a hitter. As we lose Russ there. So yeah, I mean, Ohtani is unbelievable. And he's gonna. The funny thing is, like, I know I saw some chatter about, well, he was talking about going to the Yankees when he was being wooed. The Yankees cannot. I mean, they would have to find a home for Giancarlo Stanton and probably eat half the money to be able to bring Ohtani in there, and I don't think that's going to happen. So he's not going to go.
He doesn't look like a New York guy. I don't think he wants to play in New York.
Yeah, no, I think he wants to stay West Coast. I think the Dodgers are a big possibility, because then
I don't think they are, because of their such high salary. That I think it used to be San Diego and Seattle, but San Diego, when they signed their last big contract, now I think it's Seattle.
I'm pretty sure that a lot of salaries drop off now, like Kershaw and a couple other ones drop off. So I think that they'll be in it, but I think Seattle is probably the leading candidate.
You watch, he'll be in. He'll make a visit to the Mets, because Billy Epler was the former GM, and he will drive the price up for Seattle by visiting the Mets. That's a guarantee.
Okay. All right, let's get started.
How you doing? How you guys doing?
Good.
All right. Here we go. Sorry, just got my notes up here. All right. You guys stopped a little quicker than I expected. All right. Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, March 28th, 2023.
I'm Michael Agello.
Wow, that's all you're going to say? I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm excellent. And you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in the comings and goings in the hockey world.
Well, I am Michael Agello, and you're not. And
Right.
And I'm sure you're very thankful that you're not. So there you go.
There you go. So Mike, I mean, we may have talked about this yesterday a little bit.
Oh yes. Oh no, we didn't talk about it because
we probably could talk about it today, because I had a lot of discussions with various people.
Yeah.
About this.
I can imagine
this Austin Matthews situation, and a lot of people got in touch with me too. Now, obviously, Austin likes playing in Toronto. There's no choice about it, and I've gotten to talk to him a couple of times, once pretty recently, and I do. I really, and he loves it there. He loves it there. He's not saying anything but that. Like Austin Matthews is not saying anything but that, for sure.
Right.
But quote unquote, there is the situation of how long can he be in a situation where he doesn't where the pressure is this intense. Like the pressure in Toronto is just getting more and more and more and more and more intense, and it's almost beyond his control whether or not he's going to succeed in this. Like it's tough to be in a situation where you're playing against like we talk about, maybe the three best teams in the NHL might be in that division right now, and it's hard to sit back and realize that that's not going to change in the next couple years.
Well, the playoff format could change, which I think, when you have Brad Marchand and you have Crosby and you have McKinnon all coming out and saying that not having the divisional playoff and having a conference format is the way to go.
And that's hundreds.
That's a long shot.
I don't think it's a long. I don't think it's a long.
Support Brad Marchand.
I don't think it's a long shot because you have some of the most important teams in the league that are against it.
No, but when I
like you support Marchand in this and nothing else.
Listen, when I talk to people in the NHL about this, and Kevin talks to people in the NHL about this, we've had this discussion before on this thing. It's like Bettman and Daly are all going to say, yeah, well, we could change it, and then the next minute somebody will be unhappy because of the way because of what happens next. It's really just a circumstantial thing, and it really is like it doesn't have to be that the top three teams are in one division. It's never been that way before. It's never been this out of whack before. There's no question that, and also the reality is how much does that necessarily change everything? Because at this point, when you have half the teams in the league not making the playoffs and half the teams making the playoffs, all the teams that make the playoffs are good. They're all good.
Coincidentally, I looked it up because I was talking to Russ about that and how that would change the playoffs right now if you went to a conference playoff format. Yeah. 1-2, the first two, the division winners being first and second seed, and then 3 through 8. Boston would play the Islanders.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Boston would play Pittsburgh as they would right now.
Yeah,
Carolina would play the Islanders as they would right now. The only difference would be Devils, Tampa, and Toronto Rangers. Now, if you ask me, the Rangers probably pose similar and maybe even more challenges than Tampa Bay, but there's a psychological thing with Tampa Bay and Toronto that I think is a factor, and I just think it's inherently unfair to have to play. It's cyclical, sure, but I just think it's an unfair format because really, and I don't think it generates more interest. I think that's a complete and utter fallacy.
I agree with you. I don't think it's a fallacy. If you look at when they changed the format, how these first round matchups have been as far as ratings wise, fan wise, they've been rabid, and they never used to be rabid. That's why they made the change. Because the first round used to be kind of boring. Let's be honest.
I mean, Tampa, New Jersey, that's not exactly a series that's going to blow the ratings numbers out.
No, it's not.
But at the same time, listen, I mean, there is a drama about this 2-3 matchup in that division that is going to be the story of the first round, right? No matter how you slice it, right? That's going to be the story. Like, Toronto and Tampa are going to be the story. We already know that they're going to be
wonderful.
They're meeting in like I said last year. Toronto lost to Tampa in the first round, but they could have easily lost to Tampa in the conference finals. That's how good. And obviously, Tampa went on to win it.
Fine, but then they've gotten through 2 rounds, and that's I'm just saying that it's inherently unfair for. I think last year it was the 3rd best record and the 5th best record to play in the first round. It's ridiculous.
Well, listen, and I'm not. Regardless of that,
now you overcome that, you win.
But let's just take that out of the equation for a second. I mean, Tampa hasn't been the greatest team in the world over the last month. So, the reality is they've struggled too.
Maybe the Leafs sweep them.
Yeah, they could. I mean, and the Leafs at least didn't get a goal of beating them last year.
I'm glad you said that, just so Mike can.
I didn't even know.
I said maybe the Leafs should sweep, and X said they could.
They could.
Dream the impossible dream.
Tampa could sweep Toronto too.
No, I just wrote today for Hockey Buzz whether this
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much. That I called it. Is it going to be playoff deja vu all over again? Because now this is the thing. Last year, everybody said, "Well, the Leafs are much improved. They're better." Tampa Bay is, they had won 2 Stanley Cups, playoff fatigue, this and that, they were that. And what happened? The Leafs came out and kicked their ass in game 1, and then Tampa Bay responded in game 2, and they won game 3, and then Tampa Bay kicked their ass in game 4, and then the Leafs barely won in Game 5, and then Game 6 and Game 7, Vasilevsky became Vasilevsky, and when the push came to shove, Tampa was the better team, and they won. So now this year, what's happened? The Leafs are much improved. They've added depth. They've added depth on the blue line. They've added depth up front. Their goaltending with Murray and Samsonov is better than Jack Campbell and Eric Kallgren. Okay.
Yeah.
What is that going to matter? Again, Tampa Bay's weaker without Palat, without McDonough. Okay. Show me. Until I see it, I won't believe it.
I'll tell you what. No, of course. And listen, you're talking like most Leaf fans would, whatever.
I'm not a fan. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying until you see it, you can't believe it. I mean, you've lived through many, many years of losing in the first round, and that is not a fun thing to go through. And it is it must seem miraculous to even think about other teams enjoying the fact that they can go to a second round. I mean, and I get that, that makes total sense. But, the reality is that this year, I actually would rather play Tampa than the Rangers in the first round. But, McDonough is a huge playoff performer for Tampa. He has been for Tampa in the playoffs. McDonough has mattered a heck of a lot. And that's a big, big loss. Palat, same way. These guys have both been big, big playoff guys. And this Tampa team has a tough time keeping the puck out of that. And this Toronto team scores in bunches. So it's going to be
Tampa could lose the next 8 games in the regular season.
I know.
And it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because they're playoff tested. I get that.
Right.
And they get, but none of this is really the story that I'm saying because
no, I was gonna respond to that.
Yeah, because the reality is here, it could happen that they lose again. Okay. Yeah. And I don't believe that this is going to change. Now let's just, it would be way more surprising if they changed the playoff format. I don't remember a league ever changing the playoff format based on what the player said ever in any situation.
No, it's a more fair solution.
It may be a more fair solution, but it's not. It's only slightly more fair. And the reality is, when
you've changed the scheduling format, because remember, interdivision playoffs were when these teams were playing 8 times. Now you're playing inside your own division 4 times.
But if your hope is Austin, no, go ahead, Mike, continue. But no, I know
your division 4 times, and you're playing inside your conference 3 times. Right. So there's really no difference.
I don't disagree with that. The format should be changed. Okay, let me just say that right off the bat. Okay, but I don't think it's going to get changed. I don't think it's a big enough deal to have to get changed. And if you're relying on Austin Matthews staying there on it getting changed, then you're losing Austin Matthews.
Okay,
that's the reality. It's not going to
go with this. Here's something that my parents went through when they were younger. So the Yankees would win all the time, right? The Yankees would play the Brooklyn Dodgers. The Brooklyn Dodgers would lose to the Yankees all the time.
Yeah.
Except in 1955, the Brooklyn Dodgers beat the Yankees. That's how you get out of it. You win.
Yeah. Like the Boston Red Sox winning the World Series. It's
and Russ, and this, I'll get to the Matthews thing in a second, but yes, and I just said this in my column. The Leafs supporting cast is better. Their defense is better. They've got more experience. I think they're better in goal. It's going to come down to the core group of Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, and Riley beating Hedman, Vasilevsky, Stamkos, Kucherov, and Point. And if they can do that, then they win. And if they can't do it, then that core, as I've been saying for 4 years, needs to be broken up. Now, that core, the part of broken up, is not Austin Matthews. Austin Matthews,
of course not.
They have been saying, and he has said, and he said at the beginning of the year at the season opening press conference, and he has said, and not directly to me or a reporter, but like to other people who have communicated the message. Mm-hmm. As long as the Leafs are trying to win a championship, he is prepared to stay in Toronto. Toronto will make him the highest paid player in the NHL.
That won't be about money. It's not.
I know, but it's more about the former than the latter. It's about them trying to win a championship.
Okay, but there's other things at play here.
Yep.
So next year is going to be the same. We know that. It's the same teams. They're not going to change the format. Similar teams will be in similar spots.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So if you know that and you're the Leafs, then build a better roster, coach differently. Because you can't convince me Keefe is coaching that different than he did a year before or the year before that. And at some point, you have to do things differently. If it's mentally, if you need to get mentally stronger because these guys, fall apart when Tampa scores a couple goals from behind, then you need to change things up and you need to change it all around. Otherwise, nothing will change.
All right, let's get back to the top. We'll talk about the series for sure. Okay. But let's get back to the topic at hand for a second. And that's is Othniel Matthews. Matthews going to stay there for sure. Mm-hmm. And he has said those things, Mike. I agree. He said those things to me. I get that. He said those things. Those are exactly that. Those are his words. Yeah. But it feels a little bit like a GM saying something with an expiration date on it. There's definitely a thought that, okay, as of now, of course he's not going to ever say Matthews is a great teammate and he's a fool. He's never going to ever say in the middle of the year or any time like that he's going to ever leave the Leafs. But you got to realize that the pressure is not getting better. And listen, Tampa could fall off, but Buffalo's coming. Other teams are coming. It's going to be that division is still going to be really hard, and Boston could fall off too. I mean, in all likelihood, it feels like 3 years from now, if the Leafs keep this thing together, they are by far the best team in that division. But that's if they keep it together. And
and that's another question. Now, first the Matthews part of it.
Yeah,
and we've talked. I've talked to other reporters, and I've heard this, unconfirmed over the last few months. Kyle Dubas, we know, is maybe singing for his supper in terms of this is the last year of his contract, and he acted like a general manager. Not desperate, but I mean, the moves that he made were probably moves that he didn't make a couple years ago to get this team over the hump.
Yeah.
Now, Austin Matthews likes Kyle Dubas. It's going to be easier for them to sign Austin Matthews to a long-term extension with Kyle Dubas as the general manager. Now, the question is, how much of a factor is that going to be in the decision-making of the MLSNE board and Brendan Shanahan down the line? Because I think it's going to be a factor. I think that, yes, they were holding Dubas's feet to the fire to get over the hump, and I think he's done everything, and they're going to have a 110-point season. But as I've said, success, regular season success means little to nothing, and what they do in the playoffs means something. And that's why the whole coming up against Tampa every year and beating your head against the wall is a factor. But I do think that Dubas's future in Toronto is directly correlated to Austin Matthews' future. And I think that Dubas could very well come back, even if they lose in the first round, to get they're going to sign Matthews before July 1st, because on July 1st, a no movement clause kicks into his contract. And they're not going to go down the road of, the Islanders and John Tavares, where he held.
Yeah, I think that. Right. No, I think that you're going to have
a couple things. Hold on, a couple things here. Yeah. So, for argument's sake, and we don't know this is going to happen, but let's say the Leafs do lose in the first round. Okay. You say, well, you got to get Matthews signed by July 1st. He may not want to. He may say, you know what? I got to think about this, because now I just have to think about, how this team is and everything else. Hold on. Yeah. And then, are you going to then wait to fire Kyle Dubas or extend Kyle Dubas based on what Matthews is doing? Because if Matthews decides to go down the Aaron Rodgers road and say, I'll let you know in a couple months, what are you going to do, Mike?
I think you make a decision on Dubas 2 to 3 days after whatever the end of the season.
Now, if that decision is firing him,
right,
and Matthews does like him, suddenly all the quotes that Matthews has said, as long as they're trying to win, go out the window.
They
really do. Because that he thinks Dubas is trying to win, and when he says that, he's implying that Dubas continually is trying to win.
Right. But you don't know that if all of a sudden, Jim Rutherford is your general manager or whoever, they fire Dubas Dubas is not, his contract is not renewed, and Jim Rutherford or somebody else is the general manager, that they're not trying to win. They're just going in a different direction. But I'm just saying, in the specific case of Matthews believes in Dubas. He believes in the direction that Dubas is going, and it would be more advantageous for the Leafs to get Matthews signed with Dubas than without him. It's not impossible. That's going to happen, but I think it's easier.
Let me ask you this scenario. So after the season, Matthews says, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I got to have time to think about it. I'm going on vacation, whatever.
That's
a normal response for any player.
Yeah.
and let's say it's 2 weeks before the draft, a week before the draft, and Matthews still hasn't given you an answer.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to trade him at the draft?
Then you have to start talking about trading him, because you cannot risk him walking away for nothing. And that would be true. Now I'm saying I don't think that's going to happen.
He's not going to walk away for nothing.
They will put the full court press on Matthews, and they're going to have to say to him, we have to get this done, before July 1st, because then all the cards, you hold all the cards, and for the direction of our franchise, we have to have an answer before July 1st. And if he says, I'm going to go into the season with my no move clause. Okay, well then the Leafs have to legitimately look at possibly trading him, because you can't risk, because he could walk away and then it's Tavares in reverse.
No, I get it, but what if he just plays it like, hey, I'm not sure, and while the Leafs are putting this full court press on, the Leafs have to now decide, are we trading him at the draft or not? They'll be able to trade him, and they will get value for him. They may not get the same value because of the no move, but they will be able to trade him. Right. But the idea is, why is Matthews going to let the Leafs hold all the cards when he has his contract set up this way so he can hold all the cards?
Yeah,
that's the question.
I mean, there's definitely advantages in both camps, but what I'm saying is the advantage for Matthews is the Leafs making him the highest paid player in the NHL. If that's not good enough for him, he doesn't have
a team can do that too.
Right. Well, okay, but Russ, if they wait a year, they get nothing for that guy, and if they're
not going to get nothing. They're not
going to get anything of value.
I want to bring up what Russ is saying, and Russ is right, because honestly, even if he played out the year, and he had his rights would still get you 2 first-round.
His rights would get you.
He has bullshit.
They would still get 2 first-round draft picks.
Okay.
You might get a first.
If you're trading him at the draft in Nashville, and I don't think this is a realistic situation. Mm-hmm. If they are trading him at the draft in Nashville, then the packages that say the Islanders gave up for Bo Horvat or Timo Meier are nothing in comparison to what one of the top 3 or 4 players in the league is going to get. Right. You're surrendering that on the hope that he decides that he's going to sign in Toronto. And that's what I'm saying. They're going to have to make it clear to him before July 1st. We need an answer.
Okay, here's what the camp will say back to you.
Right.
Here's exactly what the camp will say. Okay, Toronto Maple Leafs, we get it. What are you doing for next year? Right. Austin wants to know what you're doing to make the team better. What's the plan? Toronto's like, I don't know. We're kind of waiting on Kyle Dubas here because Matthews likes him, and we haven't even decided what the plan is yet.
Kyle Dubas would probably lay out the plan of what he has planned,
and he would. But I don't think that's.
He'll be under contract at that point.
Right. That's why they have to make a decision on Dubas. Like I said,
it may not match up. That's my point. The intersection here may not match up.
Immediately after the regular season, the MLS&E board has to meet and decide what the future is regarding the management of the team. Yeah. Shanahan, Dubas, and Keefe. Mm-hmm. That is the first shoe to drop. After that, everything else. Because, it's not only Matthews, it's Nylander, it's unrestricted free agents like Bunting and Ryan O'Reilly. Everything connects to what.
So is it a board vote that wins? It's not the answer of one person. It's what the board thinks.
No, I think it's the board. I mean, if it was up to Brendan Shanahan, Kyle Dubas would have been re-signed.
Okay, so then here's another scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm sure the board are hockey fans or whatever, but let's say it goes to the board. And they've lost in the first round. And I don't know how many people there are, but let's say there's 10 people on this board, and at least 5 of them say, yeah, Austin Matthews is great. You're going to make him the highest paid player, but we keep losing in the first round with him. Right. Why are we extending our GM when we're keep losing? Like, it's going to come up.
Well, the franchise is markedly better than it was when Dubas took over. And you got to remember, the board is made up. Remember, the ownership of the Maple Leafs is 25% Larry Tannenbaum and 75% split down the middle between Rogers and Bell, and that's TSN and Sportsnet. So they're interested in ratings. They're interested in this team.
Yeah, they're not. They don't see Matthews as the reason they're losing in the playoffs, Russ. A board of owners is not going to ever let you trade.
No, but if you're attaching Dubas to Matthews, then they have to.
But you have to
talk a board into it when you don't know if Matthews is signing either because they've had no success.
What about? I mean, there's one other scenario here that no one's talking about. Okay, and I know Mike, everyone wants to be like totally careful, and we don't want to lose him for nothing. But the reality is, you have him for another season where the Leafs are going to be good again, and there's no reason to think that if they don't have success next year, even that he could sign again after the season to stay there because he might want to be there. There is like that. That is another thing that you can play up because at the end of the day, when you look at the next year of the Maple Leafs, you're not better by anybody you're going to get from us for Austin Matthews next year. So if you lose in the first round this year, are you willing to go backwards? Like, are you willing to go backwards and say, okay, we're going to get like a couple first round draft picks in this, and we're not going to be as good?
That's okay. That is the whole reason why
they're not going to go backwards.
That is
they lose Austin
the whole reason why. You have to get an answer before July 1st because ideally they want to sign him to a long-term extension. They want him to be, he'll probably be the future captain after Tavares retires. They want him to be his entire career in Toronto. No doubt in my mind, and I'm sure that he wants to stay in Toronto if they're a consequential team. You see that ad on NHL Network. It would mean the most to me to win here. Okay, yeah, I think that's true. I don't think he would record that if that wasn't true. But the organization needs an answer from him. And if he's not ready to commit, and there are reasons for we'll give them. If you don't want an 8-year deal, you want a 5-year deal so you can hit it in free agency again. Sure. If you want to be the highest paid player in the NHL, sure. Okay, we'll give you all that, but we need an answer before July 1st. And if you don't give him an answer before July 1st, then okay, all bets are off, folks.
I'm going to tell you this. He already knows he can get that out of the league. That's why the no move is in the last year. That's exactly why they put it there.
Right. That's why Orr Wasserman and Judd Moldaver, his agent, crafted. Remember,
that's why Mike's pushing to do it before July 1st.
Right. Mike is pushing for that, but I'm telling you.
No, the Leafs.
What is their motivation?
The Leafs will push for that as well, Mike, but at the end of the day, they can't get it.
If in the end of the day that they can't get it, then what I'm saying is they have to seriously consider the ramifications of him not. You're going into Tavares territory, and look what it did to the Islanders. I'm saying right now,
they got better after Tavares left.
They did not get better.
Well, they did. They went to the Stanley Cup. They went
to two flawed conference finals when the seasons were short.
They never did that with Tavares there. I'm just saying.
Yeah, wonderful.
They're a better team than they were when Tavares. They're a better team.
They are not.
The Tavares Islanders are not better than this Islanders team. This year is better than the Tavares Islanders team.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
The only thing is I just have a hard time believing that Matthews Camp is going to surrender an answer to make the Leafs happy.
Okay.
All right, listen, Randy's saying in the chat room, get your
it's an agreement, Russ. We're giving you something, you're giving us something. Yeah. So, 5 years ago, the Leafs wanted an 8-year contract. Matthews and his agent wanted a 5-year contract. Why? Because at 27 years old, he can cash in again. Right. And he's going to cash in again. And he's going to be the highest paid player in the NHL. So
he can go to the Carolina Hurricanes and get that contract and possibly win the cup that year.
Well,
no,
he could. And
I'm just giving you an example.
If he pick where he goes, he's going to go to a place where he will make a difference.
He could, and that is the reason why if he's not prepared to commit based on everything that the Leafs are willing to offer him, then they have to consider the possibility of trading him if he doesn't commit. They want to keep him. They want him to be there for the rest of his career. But if he's not willing to commit, even on a deal that meets some of the criteria for him, like 5 years instead of 8 years.
But if you haven't listened to defend him for a second, if you haven't won and you haven't been when they win a first round, and granted, a couple of those, I'll put a couple of those playoff series early on him. Like he was terrible, but he's been really good since then in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And but if you haven't won a first round and you don't win a first round again, and the pressure in Toronto, everybody's like, oh, we haven't won with Matthews in 7 years or what have you, like that you cannot blame Matthews for looking at his options.
I'm not blaming Matthews.
You also can't back him into a corner because that's not going to work with him.
Right.
It's not going to work with his agent. It's not going to work with him. It doesn't work with any player in the NHL.
for the future of the franchise, you have to be that way.
But why don't you believe in yourself enough to take him through another year and maybe win
Because
that?
all the cards are in his favor. Everything is in his.
Of course they are, because
they're all in his favor anyhow.
they are all in his favor. He doesn't have to sign anything. You can't force him to do anything.
Mike, everything is in his favor. He's the franchise player. He's a top 5 player in the league.
Yes.
It's all in his favor.
If you want to keep him, it's in his favor. If you want to trade him, sure. But that's in your favor. But that's not really in your favor, because you're never going to do
that. In his favor. It's more in his favor after July 1st. More.
Of course it is.
Well, I mean, it is a little more, but he's still got the bargaining power now.
Even now, he still doesn't have to sign anything.
I know that.
So
you hear what I'm saying?
I do hear you, yes.
No, but listen, all I'm saying is this, like, stop for a second. I hear what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. Theoretically, it's all perfectly makes sense. The reality is there are people involved here, and there's other concepts involved here. And what I'm saying is there might not be another option. Like, they could, if you think they should just get whatever, if he says, listen, I'm going to go into this last season and see and we'll talk contract at the end of the year. If he says that to you, right, you say he's gone, right? He's got to be gone.
I didn't say he's gone.
No, but in your mind, you think you have to get rid of him, right? Because
I say, okay, he is one of he is one of the top 5 assets in the league. Okay, you cannot risk him walking away for nothing in the summer of 2024. And that's directly correlated to him having a no move clause and having all the control after July 1st of this year. So
you're going to back him into a corner now and tell him he's got to
it's not backing into a corner. It's like, okay, Austin, we want to make you the highest paid player in the NHL. Please back me into a friggin' corner by paying me the most in the NHL.
But he's going to get the most in the NHL anywhere he goes, Mike. It's not about money. It's not. He's going to get as much as he wants anywhere he goes.
Are they not trying to win with everything that they've done over the last?
I don't blame. I think they are. You know me.
They're trying to win.
You know me. I sit there and I say they're getting a bad rap for going out in the first round last year. That was a tough friggin' first round, and it could be the same as this year.
Right.
But I'm not saying that they're not doing the best they can. I think they're a great team. I think they're one of the best teams in the league.
Right.
I think they're one of the Cup favorites right now.
But I see a point of frustration at some point.
But if they have a different playoff format, they would have a chance to get past the first round. But anyway.
But there could be a point of frustration with him if they lose again. That's something that's potentially.
That's what I'm trying to say here. You
got
to take.
I'm saying.
And if they win, then I don't think it's an issue at all. Like, I think he will resign this summer, and I think he will.
I will tell you this: if I were Matthew's agent, I would say, especially if we lose in the first round, we're not against re-signing with you. Let me see what you do over this summer.
Yeah,
and then I will give you my decision.
And because they'll wait till the last minute because they can. And
Russ, that's the whole reason. That's the whole reason that you can't wait, because
right. But I mean, why are we walking into the same situation, losing situation?
All right, you keep trying to make it like that the Toronto Maple Leafs have.
I want to see real change, or I'm not coming back.
Right, like the reality is,
like what, Russ?
Like you on this show. If you don't get fired off this show, I'm not coming back. Like that.
Okay, bye.
All right. All right. Can I try to explain one thing here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Back or stay there, Mike. It might be better if you stay off screen for a second. All right, Mike. All right, I know Mike's making. All right, listen. That's right. All right. But all right. So here's the reality here. Okay, there's only 2 scenarios. Okay, there really are, and both are in Matthew's favor already.
I agree.
Because everyone knows that July 1st, the no movement clause kicks in. So no matter how you slice it, it's not a secret. The Leafs don't not know it. Matthews knows it.
Let
me finish. Let me finish my thoughts. Okay, so Mike, you're saying you cannot let him walk away for free. But if you give him the max amount of money and he refuses to sign, you then what? All right. So the only thing you do is if you give him the max amount of money, you refuse to sign. You're gonna trade him before July 1st. That's right.
You have to consider it. Yes.
Not consider it, but you're saying you have to do it because you can't.
In my mind, if he's unwilling to commit,
right,
then you have to. Then I think you have to consider trading him. Yes. You have to field offers from other teams to see before July 1st to find out what you can get for him. And then if, that's holding his feet to the fire because, maybe he doesn't want to go to play for Los Angeles for a year or St. Louis for a year.
It's only a year. I don't think it matters to him.
Because then he's a mercenary and then he goes where he wants to go.
For a year, it won't matter to him.
Right. But
the reality is this. We're back into the other situation too, right? Because if that happens, if we get to this scenario and they're going to trade him just anywhere, that team's going to want to talk to him. The team's going to want to say, because they're going to be giving up multiple first-round draft picks, multiple things.
It's going to be players and first-round picks. For a guy like Matthews,
you're players, but those players, none of those players are going to touch Matthews in level of skill.
No, right? I'm not saying that. I mean, that's why the option A is re-signing him and extending him for 5 to 8 years. And that's what the Leafs want. And that's what I think Matthews wants. But, his camp saying, okay, well, what are you going to do to change, the direction? Okay, well, we're going to trade William Nylander. Oh, but I like William Nylander. Okay, well, see, at a certain point, the management has to say, well, this is the direction, we'll lay it out for you, but there's no guarantees that we're going to be able to do anything like that because it's up to the other player to decide. Like they could say, we want to re-sign William Nylander, but if he wants $9.5 million, then they're not going to be able to re-sign William Nylander. Right. So it's, right now, before July 1st, Matthews has the advantage, but the Leafs have some leverage. After July 1st, it goes all the way in Matthews' camp, and that's where Tavares was with the Islanders in 2018.
No, it's not.
And he walked for nothing.
I'll tell you why it's not where the Islanders sucked when Tavares left them. Okay, the Leafs are still a good team. He loves Marner. He loves playing there. He's got great friends there. He could play another year. They could win the Stanley Cup, and he could sign an 8-year contract there.
They can't risk him walking away for nothing. They can't.
But here's the thing. Like X saying, you're saying they can't. We don't know if the Leafs are saying they can't.
Right, and you also have to have some confidence in yourself. You have to believe in yourself.
Why does that make them dumb?
It doesn't make them dumb because it doesn't. Because the reality is you have to have some confidence in yourself. Like you yourself says Marner wants to sign there. I agree. Marner wants to sign there. If they have success, Matthews. I'm sorry. You say Matthews wants to sign there. If they have success, Matthews will sign there. It doesn't matter if they have success this year.
Right, but we're going under the assumption here. We're using the assumption that they're losing in the first round of Tampa. Okay, because if they win against Tampa, then I think Dubas stays. I think Keefe stays, and I think a lot of things. Okay, so we're talking about the negative scenario of them losing.
Which I don't think is going to happen. By the way, I think
no, don't, please don't. Yeah, friggin', it's
like over in 4 games.
Curse of Eklund. Don't do it, please. Pick Tampa Bay. Please, for the love of God, pick Tampa Bay.
I appreciate you think that I have that much power.
Yes.
I will pick Tampa Bay just for you. If you
Where's your side?
I can be bought, Mike. How much for me to pick Tampa Bay? All right.
I have no stake in it.
But here's the thing. I don't have that much power, but the reality is this. He does want to stay in Toronto. This is not Tavares. This is not Gaudreau, like Flamester is saying in there, because Gaudreau went into his last season with everybody basically knowing he was going to go, right?
And Calgary was dumb not to trade him.
They had the best line in the NHL that year, and they put together a team that was actually a Stanley Cup contender.
They were dumb not to trade Gaudreau, and they were smart to trade Tkachuk because Tkachuk was going to walk for nothing.
Well, if you have Gaudreau and Tkachuk, you don't trade one of them. If Gaudreau walks, then you can trade Tkachuk. Right. The reality was that they had Tkachuk and Gaudreau and the two top players centering a line on a line that was probably the best line in the NHL last year, and that line was doing really well for them. They didn't trade Gaudreau at the deadline. They played it out. And I respect them for it. And I think Flames fans have to respect them for it too, because the reality is, that's what it comes down to, right? Mike's dead on because you lived through Gaudreau. Okay, but the reality is Gaudreau was not the same situation here. The Leafs, Gaudreau hadn't been eliminated from the playoffs every year, being one of the best teams in the league. It's a very different scenario here. The pressure on Matthews is intense. This city is intense, as you can see from this conversation. It's intense, and if they lose again and Matthews doesn't have a good playoff for whatever reason, if that happens, then I could see this going a lot of different ways. Because I think he could be really frustrated by it. But who knows? Look, I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see. But I think that anyway, we have to talk about another team for a second that has already made their major changes, Russ. So Dave Scott has stepped down in Philadelphia.
Right.
Stepped down in Philadelphia.
Nobody's surprised at that.
What?
Nobody is surprised at that.
Nobody's surprised by this. Scott's a really good guy. Like, I've talked to him.
He is. I think in a way he got taken advantage of.
He was very much like a sacrificial pig sent to slaughter because he speaks for a board. Like, he speaks for a board of people. He's the chairman of that board of owners, and we don't even know who those people are. Like, that's the reality is that they keep themselves very private. So he's the one who's like, it's like MLS, with the Leafs. It's like Comcast with the Flyers, the same kind of thing. Dave Scott would go out there, and that board is not full of hockey people. That board is full of business people. And I think that if I was to make a change to the Flyers, I would say put some hockey people on that board. For crying out loud. I don't see any reason why you couldn't put
only if they buy in, though. They're not going to just give them a board spot. That's the thing.
Yeah, but because Comcast views the Flyers as a business, right? And they view, but the reality is, if you want a hockey team to be a good business, you got to have hockey people doing things.
I agree,
and that's what I think they're starting to realize. Okay, so I mean, I've been trying to get some discussions over there with. I
have not seen evidence of that yet.
Here's why I think that they do. Like, okay, so you're all talking about, like, for Briere's, people were like, oh, this means Briere's down the water. No, it doesn't. Briere was not picked by David Scott. Briere was picked by that board of people to go.
I don't know. The story is that Marcus Hayes said Dave Scott made the decision.
No.
That's what Marcus Hayes said. I'm not saying he's right or wrong, but that's what he put in the paper. I
mean, I have my own contacts, and I'll say no.
Yeah.
And the reality is, the Flyers fans wouldn't. The board is smart enough to if they did not want Briere there, they would not let Scott put him there. That board can overrun him. That board realized what the Flyers are forming is like they're going on to
fired Dave Scott and then made the counter decision. So you're right in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. I mean, I think the Dave Scott leaving thing was pretty much defined from the beginning, like from this whole thing, and they just wanted to do it in a certain way. And I do think they want to interview GMs. I think that they want to have the perception of that for sure. They're going to bring people in. I don't think there's any question about that. But I think Briere still is going to be a part in this because.
Well, I think he's going to be a part of it for sure.
The reality is, like, they're going to look at this. They're going to look at this organization very much more like I think they want like a president GM type situation, kind of like they have that's working so well in Vancouver. So no, but I'm just saying. I think that this is where this could head. Like you could bring in a Ray Shiro as a president GM. That you could have Briere as a. There's things you could do. President Ray Shiro, GM Briere, put together this group of people. Right. Spread out, like what businesses love to do, spread out the blame, like move the blame around so that you can't have like one person who's to blame for the Flyers sucking.
Right.
Right now it's always been the GM, and Comcast has really been very confident about that. Right, that's what they've done. They made it the GM because Dave Scott's been known to be just like, I'm not really a hockey guy, but we want to see them succeed.
Right.
So they bring in the guy, Helferty, who is I don't know that much about, honestly.
I mean, there's another guy who's a hockey fan.
Right, works at Comcast.
He doesn't have a major hockey background.
I think he was part of I think he's been part of the board the whole time.
Sure.
So they're bringing in someone who's there because that board has to bring it. There's no way that board isn't bringing in somebody that they're comfortable with.
Of course.
Because any board like that, a business people is going to bring in somebody that they're comfortable
with. But it still doesn't mean that his hockey acumen is any better than Dave Scott. We don't know that yet.
Now, this is the thing. Does his hockey acumen have to be better if they hire a friggin' president? Like if they have
it has to be good enough to be able to oversee the situation and see if it's going to go badly. And I think that's where Dave Scott made a mistake.
Yeah.
Because you could have seen that it was going badly before the trade deadline last year and gone a completely different course. And he could have changed the course, but he trusted his people. And, there was a movie that said, you effed up, you trusted us.
Yeah.
It's a very famous movie. And that's a good line because that's what happened.
Well, Fletcher's
Animal House, by the way.
Fletcher's a good guy to trust in situations like this, or that he's very trustable. I should say, not a good guy to trust, but he's a trustable guy.
Yeah.
I see Fletcher as like, he's non-threatening. He's a team player. He'll listen to what Scott says. He'll do those kind of things. He'll listen to the owner. Right. That's what people like about Fletcher. We've seen in hockey that that's not always the best way to go. And that's
Right.
after with Hextall, when they had a guy who didn't listen to them, they went the opposite direction with a guy
Right.
that. So now they're in a spot where they need to get somebody who will listen to them, but also can manage it, like kind of like a Brian Burke type character who's good at like handling corporate people, but also good at handling
which is what I said a couple weeks ago. Burke would make a lot of sense.
And Burke could make a lot of sense, right? But would he? I think he's happy where he is in Pittsburgh. I think.
Well, I mean, remember he was hired by the previous ownership, and I think his contract is up. I don't think it was more than a 2-year deal.
Yeah, if his contract's up and he's renegotiating, Philly might be a more interesting place for Burke to go. I mean, I could see him doing that. He's always like,
and he's friendly with Torts. Going for the USA, there's USA Hockey Mafia, so that's I think
they're friendly, but they've had some serious.
But I still think that there's a relationship there.
I think there's a mutual respect there for sure.
Yes,
no, there would be.
We'll say that, and whether or not Torts is long for this either is still up in the air. But because I think the Flyers, if the Flyers bring in another GM, they have to give that GM the right to the ability to bring in their own coach. They really do. They have to. I mean,
they're not going to do that.
I don't know.
They're not paying 3 years of Torts.
That money doesn't matter to Comcast.
It does. I think it does because.
What if they made Torts like a president? What if they made Torts a vice? They could bring Torts into a different position.
He won't do it.
Yeah, he probably wouldn't do it. I know that, but I'm just listen. I don't disagree with you 100% there. I don't know, but I think that that's a flawed plan already. If you don't let your GM,
it's not flawed, but it's already. So here's the battle. Okay, you want to draw up what the battle line is. It's you've got Danny Briere, who's been learning for a year. He's come in, everybody likes him. He's making good headway with some fans and everything else. Yeah. You're going to bring in someone now, and Torts likes Danny, right? He's already endorsed him. Now you're going to bring somebody else in that you're hoping that Torts will endorse because he's got 3 years of the contract. He's got more power than anybody else who comes in, more than the president. Unless they give the president a 5-year contract for more money, which they won't. They might give him a 5-year contract, but he won't make more than Torts.
If they bring in Brian Burke, they could. I mean,
it wouldn't make more. It would just have more years. And that would help a little bit. But that's the only way that you could sort of neutralize the power that Torts has in this organization right now. Because you see, he talks about what's happening moves-wise, the direction of the team. Name me another coach in the league that speaks like that.
You're right. No, you're right. I mean, it reminds you a little bit of like Keenan, of Mike Keenan-ish type stuff to me. But it's like, I get it. I mean, and I think that, listen, at the end of the day, this Dave Scott thing, the question is, does it matter or not? Like, does it matter that Dave Scott? Because as much as Hope-Freddy, could be different, is he really any different, or is he going to be just another figurehead for that board? Will he come off? At least he'll be a different voice. People have gotten tired of Scott's voice. I think, unfortunately, they just got tired of Scott saying, the same kinds of things that seemed like they weren't informed. But I don't know if Hope-Freddy makes a difference. To me, the difference here has to do with whether or not they hire a president. Like that can.
Okay, so let's come up with a scenario. Here's a scenario. Let's say the president's Brian Burke, because we're just going to use his name. Right. He comes in, he speaks to John. He goes, John, I know you said there's not going to be a captain next year. We all believe there should be a captain.
Right.
You think Tort's going to change his mind?
Yes.
I think with Brian Burke, he could.
Yes.
Okay. And I think there's a chance of that, but
because JD got him to do some things in Columbus that he didn't want to do.
I'm sure that's true.
Now, I think the question would be, okay, who are you going to make? You're not going to make Ivan Provorov the captain because
it would be Scott Lawton. Everybody's expecting Scott Lawton. It was supposed to be Couturier. He's had all these injuries.
Right.
But everybody expects it to be Scott Lawton now. But Torts just announced today that there won't be one next year. Like, he just announced that.
Well, if they hire a president,
he doesn't think he's in power, right?
If they hire a president, then that could change because the power shift would change.
No, I know, but I'm just saying. But you could see the power that he is wielding currently.
Sure.
Someone asked if I think Burke is not happy in Pittsburgh by this, and I don't think that's the case. But what I think,
I don't know if that's the case at all.
But what I do think about Burke is, if you look at his history, and I know the guy pretty well. I mean, I've had lunch with him 5 or 6 times, and I know him pretty well. He does tend to like challenges more than he likes situations like he's in Pittsburgh, where you have a set group of people that are older. That the pressure is to win now because of that. You can't really build a team in a typical way because of that. You have to like, he's got these guys signed forever. They're going to be there for a long time. Where, remember when he was in Anaheim, when he left Anaheim to go to Toronto, it was kind of the same sort of situation where Anaheim had won a cup. They were in success. And that once you get to there, like in Pittsburgh, once you get, there's no real victory anymore.
He got restless in Anaheim, and he said,
and also Toronto was such a golden opportunity, right? I think Philadelphia is a similar situation where, yes, it's not as successful as the Pittsburgh Penguins, but 5 years from now, it could be very different, right? So, like, I think that he sees like the Penguins aging out a little bit. The only success you can have in Pittsburgh is to win a cup. Really, they've won cups. They can't, like, there's nothing else, right? Like this group has already won cups. If they win another cup, that's great. That's what and that would be fantastic and it would be quite an accomplishment. But still, that's all you can do. Where I think that he's more of like he likes more building teams in his image, where he's maintaining a team in Pittsburgh. And I think that's to me, the maintaining of a team versus building a team is I think he would be happier in Philly. But that's just my opinion. I don't know.
Can we talk about the we talked a lot yesterday about the race in the East.
Yeah.
And the games last night really torpedoed the race in the East simply because Florida and Buffalo over the last, I'd say, week and a half. Now, Buffalo won 2 games on the weekend to sort of keep their long shot playoff chances alive. But that was, they did that after losing 8 of the last 10. So they really shot themselves in the foot.
This really was theirs to lose. I mean, honestly,
yeah,
I agree with you, Mike. Like they shoot themselves in the foot because when you look at it, the fact that they're still in it at all shows you that if they had played at least 500 hockey during that period of time.
Well, they're not anymore because now they blew a game in hand, losing to Montreal. They were leading 3-2 late in the third period. Montreal tied it up, then it went to a shootout. Eric Comrie couldn't make a save in the shootout to save his life. Yeah, they got a point, but they really did blow it. And when Michael Pezzetta scores the game-winning goal and then does a Ty Domi imitation riding his stick, I mean that's stick a fork in you, you're done. I mean it's and I'm telling you right now, the Sabres organization, they've accomplished a lot of things this year. They've got a lot of talent. They're going in a positive direction. You cannot underestimate the frustration in the fan base this year with this team not going forward in terms of making the playoffs. Now, I'm not saying sell first-round picks or significant assets, but they could have upgraded in goal. They didn't do it. You don't know what that would have done to the playoff race. And last night, the Devils sort of mailed it in against the Islanders, and the Islanders won. I think it was 5-1.
They're pretty safe now.
Yeah, well, the Islanders own the Devils also. That's another thing you have to know.
Florida got their ass kicked by Ottawa.
That was really disappointing.
That was the blow of the year for them.
Yeah, and Buffalo loses in a shootout to Montreal. So really the teams that had opportunities, Buffalo and Florida, and on the outside, Ottawa, but they dug themselves too big of a hole. They have not come up big. And again, when you're in a playoff spot, it's tough for you to fall out unless you fall on your face. And the Islanders have not fallen on their face, and neither is Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but let's look at this for a second. Now, this is my projected standings here as of after last night. And you can see, like, as you said, Mike, the Islanders are back in the driver's seat again from that win. Although I did pick them to beat New Jersey yesterday. But the situation here, but Florida and Buffalo's this is very much a long shot, like you said. And even I would be shocked if Buffalo got to 91 points. But Florida here, with 92, Florida still has a legitimate shot at this.
Yeah, they're not proving it to us. That's for sure.
I mean, yeah, they're definitely not. I mean, and they've been what's killed Florida, absolutely killed Florida, is Spencer Knight not being hurt. Like they cannot get any. They have to go with Bobrovsky constantly, and it's killing.
Yeah,
them.
There's no doubt. I mean, having Alex Lyon as the backup doesn't help you with that.
You're giving up way too many goals.
And the big factor with Buffalo, because again, going into yesterday, they had 2 games in hand on the Islanders. But we looked at Buffalo's schedule, and I'm not sure if the Buzztron 10,000 factors in.
It definitely factors in.
they have 5 games in the final 7 days because of the reschedule of a game in December. They play 2 back-to-backs in the final week. I mean, that's just an absolute destroyer of their chances.
It is a destroyer, but some of the teams they're playing in there aren't best teams, and also, some of the teams in there in that final week, that final week is the final week of the season. Some teams do tend to not be starting to mail it in a little bit. They have
that does happen, but
again, if they were to run the table on those 5, it could be interesting. But they would
again, they had a 2-0 lead against the Rangers. They lost that game.
Yeah.
To me, I know someone said the Flyers thing started it. I think it was the Ranger one only because they were up 2-0.
Right.
And I saw what happened when Bob. Sorry, I saw what happened when Bob let up the goal that put them behind, and I know what his mentally what he was thinking, kind of like at that goal, because he looked at his pads like, uh-oh.
And to make matters worse for Buffalo, Tage Thompson didn't play yesterday after fighting through what looked to be a knee injury. A couple games, they didn't play him yesterday. So that means that, the injury is more serious, or it's tougher for him to fight through it. And if that's the case, then, without their best player, then they're spent.
Right. Now let's look for a second at the other conference here for a second too, because that's also getting interesting. Let me see if I can get that up here.
Well, in the West, it's more positional than it is. Like I don't think the 2 wild cards are in danger of falling out.
I do. I mean, I do, and just the one. The one I think. Oh, let me show you just what I have here. So I think that at the end of the day, I think that this is how it's coming out. This is how it's going to play out as far as it's going. And this could be wrong, obviously, but right now it does have Calgary beating out Seattle by 1 point, which is possible.
Anything's possible.
No, it's not that far, but based on the schedules,
it's in the middle of April, but I don't think this is going to happen.
Based on the schedules, it's it is. We'll see.
I think Nashville is toast after losing Matt Duchene to a hand injury. They have no scoring right now. So I mean, without him, and I'm pretty sure Johansson's out too, and we know that Yossi was out. So yeah, I mean, they're doing it on vapor.
The Flames is all these overtime losses.
If this doesn't happen, I go in there. I'm taking the Buzztron 10,000 out in the yard and treating it like they did the copier in Office Space. That's
all right. You're welcome to that. Buzztron has been very good. All right, let's talk about the Buzztron for a second.
Take the bat that Donald Trump is threatening to use on the Manhattan PA and use it on the Buzztron 10,000.
Absolutely, I'll take the first couple swings.
Still clipping at 63%, 115 correct, 67 wrong. This is the big thing though. Winning nights this season, 17, losing nights 3, even nights 4. So if you were to bet this, if you were just betting this every night, you're winning 17 out of 21 nights. That's 17 out of 25 nights, and tying 4 others. So, but here's the Knights picks. So let's go into that. So, Nashville at Boston winning. LA at Calgary winning in overtime. This is like what you're talking about. This kind of stuff that has to happen for Calgary to make it. Calgary loses this game tonight, then the Buzztron will have them out of the playoffs, because the Buzztron right now is based on them getting these 2 points. Tampa Bay at Carolina winning in overtime. Dallas at Chicago, Dallas winning. Columbus at New York Rangers winning. Pittsburgh winning at Detroit. Edmonton at Vegas winning at overtime. Philly winning at overtime against Montreal. Winnipeg winning at overtime against San Jose, and Vancouver winning at overtime against St. Louis. The crazy thing is 6 of the 9 games going to overtime tonight, which is the first time that it's had that tight.
That's a lot of overtimes. It's decided on.
No, I mean that's how close these games are when it looks at basically a win in overtime is determined by how large a percentage, like basically all the points are to win. Like if they're within a certain amount of points, it becomes an overtime game. If it gets beyond like a certain amount of points, it becomes not an overtime game. So that means these things are all really close. That means that these are all really tight games tonight. As far as the 15 factors on the Buzztron. So we'll see. But
the one interesting thing is, for the Philly game, Caden Primo will get to play against the Flyers.
That's pretty great.
Basically, the team who allowed Montreal to draft him because they gave him an extra draft pick in the 7th round. They traded it to him.
Right. And that's pretty great. I mean, he obviously grew up in Philadelphia and different, so.
And Voorhees,
Yeah, Voorhees playing around here. So, that's a pretty cool story.
It's a cool story. It'll be a good thing to cover. It'll be fun that way. So
Yeah. The other thing about that we got off really quick, but I wanted to just mention is that the division. The crazy thing about the Buzztron, I'll just talk about this, is that the Pacific top 3 teams right now are all right. So basically, one thing, Vegas is in first, even though this says they're in second, because I have to write a thing that makes the wins the first thing. Unfortunately, it doesn't. It should say the wins should put them up here. So Vegas is in first, Edmonton, LA, but look at this, 108, 108, 107 projected.
I have no faith in the Kings, by the way, none.
Really, they've been winning like crazy. How can you have
no faith? Doesn't matter. Their defense is so loose.
Have they won like 6 games in a row, Mike, or something like that? They're like,
I don't care. In the playoffs,
they're 8-0-2 in their last 10.
Yeah, I mean, how can you have no faith in that? No. I mean, since they made that trade at deadline, they've been lights out.
Now, conversely, I have no faith in that.
I mean, yes, with Copley in goal, but they still gave up like 7 goals the other day.
Yeah, but they found a way to,
I know they found a way to win.
I have no faith in Edmonton. I mean, they're right now 5 points behind Vegas. So I think Vegas obviously is going to, Vegas could finish out of first place. The Kings are only 2 points behind them, but and you have it very close there. But I would put the odds at Edmonton winning that division at about 10-1. I think that, especially with their goaltending and their defense down the stretch, I don't think it means that much to them.
I will challenge the chat room. LA is not beating Edmonton if they meet in the playoffs. It's not happening.
With LA, no, I don't think so.
If LA faces Edmonton in the playoffs, the only advantage that LA has is the fact that they have Kopitar and Deno matching up against Draisaitl and McDavid.
That's it.
That's their best advantage. But, can Korpisalo turn it on in the playoffs like he did 3 years ago? Well, he's not facing Toronto, so the answer is probably no.
Probably not.
I think he can. He turned it on against Tampa in that playoffs, and there's playoffs in the bubble. So hey,
well, it was the same playoff, yeah.
Right, same playoff. Right.
That's a big. You're talking about a big thing for Korpisalo. I've not seen that out of him in a while.
Yeah, but we have seen this year. He's been pretty good, actually.
No, he has. He's had a good year, but again, we'll see in the playoffs.
I do put stock in players that have.
Remember, like Markstrom's always had a good year until the playoffs.
Yeah, but Korpisalo has
great years until the playoffs.
Yeah, but those guys are guys who haven't had good playoffs. Where Korpisalo has had good playoffs. Like it's a different. Like once
he hasn't been in.
So he hasn't had that many chances to be in the playoffs. Like he's played
small sample size.
He's been in the playoffs twice, right? So he's one of them was really good. So I think that's. I'd rather take that over a guy who's never been good in the playoffs. I mean, I just think that he has shown the ability to play under pressure. I mean, I think that
we'll see who the Buzztron picks because I'm picking against it.
Yeah, we'll see where we get there. But anyway, Buzztron's still killing it. If you're hopefully someone out there is making money. Like I said, I've yet to gamble on it. But we'll definitely have a talk. We got 9 games tonight, and we'll see where it goes. But that's all the time we have for today, folks. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you all.
Would pick Dragoff against Stallone against Rocky
tomorrow. Take care.
I must break you.
Yes.